Hey, so I wanted to do this video today because I thought it would be a good idea to speak about the different types of unhealthy relationships. So if you're in an unhealthy relationship, sit tight because I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to know, and you can identify these signs really easily, and then you can decide obviously what you're going to do about it. But I hate to say it, but I've been in abusive relationships before. Nothing physical, thank goodness. I grew up in a house where there was physical violence, and I guess that's been one boundary I've managed to stick to. But in terms of emotional abuse and verbal abuse, it's a lot harder to spot it because your own self-doubt comes in. You start to think, well, maybe if I did this a bit more or I did this a bit less, they'll be happy. And you kind of maybe blame yourself for some things. And over time, the way they treat you becomes normalized, and you kind of start to lose the plot about what is normal and what is actually crossing a boundary. So I'm going to go through 7 signs today. Sit tight, and if you see or notice any of these, it's a red flag, and either think about getting therapy, getting another opinion, speak to friends, or just be aware, because sometimes people do things as a one-off and it's just being human. That's what happens. But if you find that it becomes a pattern of behavior and it's something that starts to regularly crop up and get repeated, then you're looking at something that is pretty clearly abuse. So here they are. Have a listen, and if you've got any comments at the end, you're welcome to put in comments or subscribe to the channel. This is my first video in a while, but I will be following it up with more videos on how to boost your mood, psychological tricks on how to be more confident, how to get through life, cope with stress and anxiety, also relationship stuff. So I'm a qualified therapist, and I also put a lot of my own personal life experiences into my sessions as well, and to my videos, to just let people know what is normal and that we all go through stuff and we've all got challenges in life to cope with and figure out ways to deal with. So one of the first things I'm going to say about an unhealthy relationship is somebody that doesn't validate how you feel. So if you say something like, you never call me, or I feel a bit ignored, and they go, of course I call you and you shouldn't feel ignored, they're not kind of listening to you, they're just listening to what they want to believe about the situation. So a healthy response would be, you feel ignored and I'm not calling you? Oh, gee, I didn't realize. Let's talk about it. What do you mean? So somebody who validates really wants to know about your experience, and they care about how you are getting along in the relationship with them, because your happiness is kind of their happiness and you're a team. When people say, no, you shouldn't feel like that, or no, that's not true, they're kind of just shutting off your experience. And where do you go with that? So somebody who doesn't validate your experience, this buzzwords lately, lived experience, that is going to end up leaving you feeling quite lonely and isolated in the relationship and unheard. And over time, that will build up resentment. So really try and nip that in the bud, talk to them about it, say, this is how I'm feeling. Whether you see that or not, this is the feeling that we need to deal with, and how do we fix it and problem solve around this feeling, rather than them just say, well, that feeling doesn't exist, so, get on with it. So that is really important, validating each other's feelings, and even if you don't understand why that feeling is there, trying to get to the bottom of how you can avoid that or deal with it together. Second sign of an unhealthy relationship is deflecting. So if you say to your partner, gee, when you have a drink with a bit of alcohol, you get quite aggressive. Instead of them kind of owning that behavior or going, really? Or I didn't think so, or sitting and thinking about it, they'll immediately go back on something or comment on something that you do, like, oh, well, you shouted at me last week, or they will just pick out something that you've done or one of your insecurities. So they kind of deflect it all back onto you. So it's your fault. Deflecting is partly about never accepting blame and everything being somebody else's fault, which is again very, very dangerous in a relationship and can leave you feeling unheard and frustrated. And over time, that's going to just eat away at you and eat away at the relationship. So deflection is very unhealthy, and what you should try and do is deal with one problem at a time. So if you bring up drinking and alcohol and aggression, deal with that issue first, you and your partner, and then if they have an issue that they want to bring up, that's the second issue to deal with at a separate time. What often happens is that we deflect and then we get stuck onto some other thing, and then nothing ever gets resolved. So each problem that you bring up it should be done in a time when you're both sitting down calmly and you can talk nicely together and problem solve together. Deflection and just blaming other people is just counterproductive, and it's not going to help the relationship at all. Third sign of an unhealthy relationship is dishonesty and lying. So we have white lies, which sometimes, I guess, you've got to look at the context and use your common sense. But lying isn't a really good sign that things are going to work well. If your partner feels they can lie to you, then you're kind of not connecting, and you're kind of turning away from your partner. If you want to create that lovely bonding and connection and feeling of intimacy together, you kind of got to tell each other everything and just be open. I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't have little secrets about stuff. That's not lying. And by that, I don't mean like having affairs on the side, but you might go shopping and get your hair done and decide not to tell your partner. I don't know, that's not exactly lying, but if they asked you about getting your hair done, don't say you didn't get it done. And if you are lying about something, then it's good to ask yourself why you feel that that's something you can't come clean about in the relationship. But in general, lies and dishonesty mean that you don't trust each other, and that, to me, is one of the biggest deal breakers in a relationship is dishonesty. So if there is dishonesty and lying, it really is important to either get somebody in to help, like go for couple counseling, or really sit down together and work person to person rather than enemy to enemy, and try and see yourselves as a team and figure out why this is happening and what you can do to work around it and to improve the relationship. Another sign of an unhealthy relationship, and this one is particularly tough, and I've experienced it myself, is the silent treatment, or stonewalling, as we call it. And that is where somebody just shuts you out. So you're not working on the problem, you're not discussing the problem, you're just kind of locked out in the cold or shut out in the cold. It's a kind of a form of abuse and manipulation, because it's all on that person's terms. They shut down your voice and you can't discuss what's going on. It's immature, and it really is not a good sign for the longevity of a relationship. If somebody's stonewalling you, you need to call it out, and you need to say to them, this is not something that I'm prepared to put up with. They need to understand that communication is the key to resetting, I call it, where you sort of reset to zero and you feel happy in the relationship again. When we don't talk and we don't communicate regularly, I think we start to sort of notch up 1, 2, 3 in terms of resentment and stuff that we're carrying. And when you reset to zero, it means you've cleared the air, everything's out, and you're happy again. So regularly check in, make sure you've reset to zero, and that you're regularly talking about any issues that come up in the relationship. So again, silent treatment, not a good idea, but there may obviously be a reason behind that. Perhaps that person just doesn't know how to communicate. They may be on the spectrum, the autistic spectrum. There can be other, you've got to look at this in context, obviously, but as general rule, stonewalling is incredibly damaging to a relationship. Another sign that you're in an unhealthy relationship is any type of verbal abuse. Calling names, definitely a big no-no. There's no reason to call somebody a name. It's childish, it's immature, and we need to stay in adult mode when we're communicating with each other. You wouldn't speak to another adult. You wouldn't call somebody at work an arsehole or something. You just wouldn't do that, but we get complacent with our partners. So if somebody calls you names, you call them out. That is absolutely unacceptable, unless it's a sweet little fluffy bunny name or something like that. Criticizing you, belittling you, kind of putting you down, it's a form of control to keep the one person feeling more superior in the relationship. And it is absolutely emotional abuse, in my view. So any name calling, belittling, putting you down, just making, why are you wearing that? That looks stupid. Or you didn't cook that meal very well. Or why are you wearing that out? Or stop asking me. Or just talking to you like you're a child, or making you feel disrespected. Really be aware. That's a red flag for me. In a healthy relationship, of course, sometimes we lose our temper, we say the wrong thing, or we say something in the wrong tone. But the general level should be friendly, kind, and respectful of each other's feelings. Another side of an unhealthy relationship is when they make big decisions without you. You're kind of just the side feature in the relationship. Good relationships work together. They make big decisions together. I'm not talking about small decisions about whether you buy popcorn or sweets. It's the big stuff like holidays, how you spend your money, where you live, how you bring up your kids, accepting job offers if it's going to affect your relationship as a couple. It's just having that empathy and that forethought for your partner, it also makes them feel loved and included. So that is just something, when you want to be a team and you want to connect and have shared values, that is something that is really important, is this shared decision making. It just makes you both feel included, and somebody who does that without you is either showing some sort of narcissistic tendencies or a need for control. And narcissism and control in relationships is like water on a fire. It just ruins everything. And lastly, someone who ignores your boundaries. This is really important. If you have a boundary that they do not agree with, then you have to obviously compromise. I think the 3 C's are important here. So it's communication is key, compromise, and collaboration. I think those 3 things together make for healthy relationships. And if your partner ignores your boundaries, you may say to them, please don't not call me late at night because I really worry, and they just keep repeating it. It almost shows a lack of care for you, and just not bothered about how you feel or think. It's all about them. Again, that could be narcissistic tendencies in terms of, well, it's all about me and you'll just have to put up with whatever comes your way. It's not a good sign. I deal with a lot of different relationships where there's narcissism involved, and narcissism is where you are kind of an object in the relationship. They don't see you as an equal. They see you as kind of more an adoring fan, or somebody who should be an adoring fan. And any calling them out will just make them defensive. They won't be willing to listen, and they will play the victim mode, like I mentioned earlier about never taking ownership or responsibility for their actions. All of these things should niggle you. There should be, I hope you have some kind of inner wisdom or inner intuition that tells you something doesn't feel right, and it probably isn't. 9 times out of 10, myself included, when I've been in a relationship and I've wanted it to work so badly, I've ignored the signs because I thought, oh, it's a one-off, it won't happen again, it's fine. And more often than not, it happens again. And over time, once they've got you emotionally hooked in, it's really hard to get out. It's almost like an addiction to narcotics. It's bad for you, it's probably going to kill you in the long run, but you just find it almost impossible to sort of wean yourself away. That is quite normal, especially if you've had a tricky childhood. There's something called trauma bonding. Do not be hard on yourself. It can be a trauma-related response. All I can say is, for yourself, think about the things that are really important to you. Being loved, respected, cherished, treated fairly, treated equally. That's all we ask for really in a relationship. And if you find that you're really having trouble and you just can't seem to get things right, but you really love your partner, there are ways around things. You could always contact somebody for couple counseling. Therapy is a great way to inject a objective third-party perspective on things, and to help you both see where you might be going wrong, tweak your communication styles, and give you lots of tips that you can try at home to kind of rebuild your connection. So yeah, those are my tips. I'm going to quickly run through them. So it's not validating your feelings, just kind of, they have their version of things and that's the version that counts. Deflecting, where they twist it all back onto you and you never actually get to the sort of root of the problem. Dishonesty and lying, definitely a big no-no, big red flag for that one. The silent treatment, stonewalling, again, that's manipulation, leaving you out in the cold with no form of communication. It's just basically like mental torture, and it's really cruel. Belittling, criticizing, calling you names, all types of verbal abuse. Sometimes we slip, sometimes we're human, but generally, if that is a behavior that keeps repeating, you must nip that in the bud, call it out for what it is, and speak to your partner about that, because that cannot continue. Making decisions without you, again, you should be a team, you should be working together with the same values, the same sort of form of trying to connect with each other, and ignoring your boundaries. Again, all of these kind of represent a lack of empathy, a lack of care for your experience in the relationship. And a good relationship means you both want to make each other happy. That's the bottom line of a good relationship, really. So I hope these tips have helped you today. I will be doing some more videos. I'm getting used to this, so hopefully they'll get a bit better as I go along. I'm still kind of practicing doing this vlogging video stuff. If you've got any questions, please write to me. I do have a website, www.thoughtsonlifeandlove.com. My name is Mandy Kloppers. I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, and I'd love to hear some comments from you. Get in touch if you'd like to, and I shall be along soon with a new video. Bye for now.